You want to know what that is, Jake? It's a coronavirus chasing a man. Jake. That's what it does. See, Jake? Now you have access to the chat. Okay. We got a couple people in the chat. Can you fix that? What are you doing?
Just want to see what it sounds like. Wow, I'm kind of surprised that microphone works as good as it does.
Well, you know, you're going to have a fan noise because I'm on my laptop right now. We're sort of chilling out in another room. So you might... I just figured if I lifted it up, maybe the fan would turn off, but...
Oh, yeah, probably not.
I don't know. Maybe we should get the mic so you don't hear it as much.
I don't think we could.
I'm going to do that because listening to that fan noise is awful. So why don't you give people an update for now, and I'll go get the mic.
Okay. Well, I'm sure everyone's more than aware of circumstances. Thank you all for joining our live stream of updates on coronavirus. A lot has happened since we talked about this a couple of days ago. We have stimulus package money coming our way. We have paid sick leave that's been approved, free testing, co-pays waived. So that's happening now. Tests are being ramped up. So let's talk about that for a minute, because right now we're seeing an explosion of numbers of positive cases, but this was already predicted, folks. Hold on a second. Mario's going to plug this microphone in.
All right, yeah. I think you'll like this mic better here, Jake. I can do this. Let's get this set up here. Hold on just a moment. All right. That's better. I bet. I can't hear it myself, but I just have this instinct that it's better, Jake.
So, we were talking about cases that have been updated so far, and not to be alarmed by these high numbers. Today, the United States actually gained over 4,600 cases today. New York is the epicenter right now of this. We are sitting somewhere around, I think, 5,300 cases here in New York alone. So that's to be expected. What we need to watch over the next several weeks is the percentage of people who have to be hospitalized. That's the problem. We know we're going to find positive tests. We know we're going to have cases out there. That's not going to be the shock. And what they're trying to do with this social distancing is trying to slow that wave of patients and keep the flow at a minimal rate. Now, with that being said, new studies are coming out now, and I knew that we couldn't trust the Chinese information, but looking at information coming from Italy and other European countries, we are now finding that the young are now susceptible to this. So it's no longer, well, the young are strong and they'll fight it off, blah, blah, blah. And then they switched it into, well, you know, we need you to do your part so you don't hurt Pop, Pop, and Nana. And now they're saying that we're looking at younger folks who are being hospitalized more than the 60 and up population. So now the average age of death is still high in the 70s and 80s, but the numbers are going up just slightly. And people who are in their 50s and 60s, we have some deaths sprinkled in there from 30s and 40s as well, but the bulk of it is going to be your 70, 80-year-olds who have underlying conditions already. Now, with that being said, we're going to see higher numbers. We're going to see more cases. But now we have to react properly. to contain this. And Mari probably, thankfully, jumped the gun in our household. We took the kids out of school a week before they closed. It was a blessing in a weird way that I was already having medical issues, was on doctor's advisement before this got serious. I had a note to take me out of work till that Friday, and then the doctor extended that time till this past Monday. And then finally, with everything that's going on, I actually was advised, it was strongly against me working in my current settings, and that I needed to work from home if that was possible. So, and let me tell you about how we got to that. Because when I first went to the doctor's office, guys, I'm going to tell you something. I had a lot of body aches, a horrible abdominal pain. Mari and I both had abdominal issues and headaches, really bad headaches, and this fatigue like I've never felt. So I go to the doctor, and they're thinking it's an upper GI infection or whatever. Day 2, I go back to the doctor. They haven't come back-to-back days. The second day, I get an x-ray and blood work. Well, now they see something else. It's an issue with my pancreas. So, thankfully, I was already down for the count, not going to work, not being exposed. Because my job, I'm exposed to a lot of public. So, this was a blessing in a small way. Thankfully, it was just an upper GI infection and just an inflammation, nothing serious. But yet, by the time we got to Monday, which was my follow-up appointment, at that point, we had a lot of talk about, people with diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, liver disease, any serious chronic illness that you might suffer from. You're at a higher risk. And a lot of the patients in Mari's research shows that people with diabetes are at the highest amongst those without being 60 years or older. So, I asked 2 times for a test last Thursday and Friday, and was denied both times. And here's where this doesn't make sense, and I didn't get it at first, because I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. I'm a high risk. My blood sugars are not always the best. I'm suffering from abdominal pain, terrible headache, and fatigue. No sore throat, no fever, but these are symptoms that were showing up in Wuhan. Am I right?
Yeah, they had precursor symptoms. A lot of precursor symptoms was like headache and abdominal issues. So, and I feel like since the 2 of us had it, I'm suspect that you actually had an infection that needed, because the antibiotic is for a bacterial infection, which I find, viruses you can't do that with, and we both had the same symptoms. So who knows? I don't know. So
is it possible that I maybe had a light bout with it? I don't know. But nonetheless, I applaud Mari for keeping our family safe, because it was her idea to pull the kids out last week. I went to work one day last week, and it was on Tuesday, and then Wednesday I got ill, and then, like I said, Thursday, Friday, Saturday I was under doctor observation. I want to address something for Brandon. Watch New York. The drug that you mentioned here in the chat has been chloroquine. Has been released as a possible cure, and use is to begin in New York. Well, listen, there is that testing will begin on this drug in 3 to 4 weeks. Okay? Then they have to do the monitoring process after that. At best, they are looking at a therapeutic treatment ready for September or even fall of this year. So yes, there is some indication from this drug that it has worked. But the biggest factor about this drug here, and Dr. Fauci is also on the same page on this with me as well, what I'm saying, the tests, the studies have not been controlled enough for this to qualify as a potential cure for anybody just yet. So testing and clinical trials can begin in about 3 to 4 weeks, and then you have to go through the phase of monitoring how this drug does with the patient. Now, today, President Trump had the president of the FDA with him, and he reassured everyone with that particular drug that, yes, there's familiar traits about it. They know what the drug does for malaria, but the FDA assured the public today that they were not going to cut any corners when it comes to producing this medication, this therapeutic treatment that could be ready. And I think fall is pushing it. I think fall may not even be enough time. I may be giving bad info on that, but that is, from what I heard, is the soonest that this therapeutic drug will be available. Now there is the he's doing the right to try, which means if the hospital you're in has these drugs, you will get them, and you will then become a part of that study now, even though it's not time for human trials yet. Now, there was a lady on Fox News today that was talking about how this drug saved her husband's life. Maybe it did. Maybe it did. Maybe it did, but maybe it could have been something else that they were doing during the treatment. There's not enough controlled studies. So it's fine to talk about this possible cure, but one thing I don't like about the way these politicians and doctors talk, they tap dance on the truth of the timeline. They don't want to give it out because it is going to be a shock when people finally realize, okay, this is not, baseball season's not going to start in May.
Yeah, people are not aware that life as we know it has changed. And going forward, things are going to be much different because people have a different consciousness of what's going on. And with that, they are talking about the Imperial research from Imperial College by the COVID-19 response team. And most Americans, I would guess, when they say that casually, oh, the Imperial research and blah, 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 most Americans aren't going to go and dig up that paper to see what it says. And it's very just, my jaw was dropped when I was reading it. Essentially, we could be like this for another 18 months. But they're not going to come out and say it. But that is what the paper is suggesting, because there's no immunity, there's no cure. The cures that are, in the works, they're not really tried and tested. They weren't a controlled science. There wasn't any proper experiments. It's just off the cuff, learning on the fly to see what works. Whether or not it really works, that is going to be put to the test. I'm pretty sure our state, New York, is going to be trying that. From what I've been reading, we're already in very rough shape in New York. We were already, before this incident, our hospitals were at 80% capacity. And I don't know if anyone's seen the mayor pleading for days to close the city. And there's this huge Cuomo doesn't want to do anything more. I'm not sure what the difference between what Blasio shutting everything down versus what we currently are in with most things shut down. I don't know if they're hoping more so that would happen on a national level because they're worried about people fleeing the state and having the spread, go even further. Who knows? I think the spread's out of control, personally, countrywide already.
Well, I mean, when Ohio, and guys, watch the state of Ohio. They are leading by example. Everything they've done statewide, the federal government's almost mocked them. So Mike DeWine has taken let's all remember that name, guys. Mike DeWine of Ohio has been the first governor to take action the way he's taken. and he has the least amount of cases that are confirmed. Now, he took it upon the advice of his health advisor there, and they thought they had 100,000 cases walking around that were not tested. The problem today is here in New York, the current epicenter here of the United States. And the fear is growing. When you watch your mayor of New York City, the most well-known city in the United States. I mean, if you're not the president, if you're the mayor of New York City, that's a pretty big deal when it comes to politics. And I tell you what, de Blasio is having a hard time doing these press conferences, and it seems to me as if the numbers are not just shocking, but is he seeing this firsthand? Is he visiting the hospitals, or does he have inside staff that's doing it?
I'll tell you straight up. I know people in the healthcare industry. I have a friend who's a nurse in our state capital, and she is beside herself already. And it's mainly because of all the protective gear shortages. She is given a mask to wear her full shift, and if something happens to that mask or she needs to take it off for whatever reason, she can go without it. You don't have it, Jake.
No.
She can go without a mask. It's crazy because they should be our top priority. Our nurses, our doctors, our front lines. We've already had people in NYFD get coronavirus. There's several of the NYPD that are in quarantine right now because they've had people cough on them and, say they have corona. And people are just nasty and malicious. It's insane. But this state, I think there's going to be a handful of states throughout the United States that are really going to take the brunt of it and suffer a lot more. California, New York, Florida, possibly Texas.
Well, the whole United States.
But I think there's going to be some.
There's not
hopefully.
Good. Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, maybe the Dakotas. You're talking about not as dense populated states. And I can tell you right now, the East and the South and the Midwest, no way they're not getting out of this. The West Coast, obviously, and then, of course, around the southern border even more. But there might be that Goldilocks zone in the states I mentioned earlier, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, just because of how much everything is spread out. Even in Kansas. I've lived in small towns of 637 people in a town. And it was something out of an old Western movie. You had a town grocery store, a little garage that fixed cars, and you got your air in your tire there, and a gas station, and then a post office and one bank, and that's what it was. That was the town. So,
most of these small towns, if they even have a hospital, their hospitals only have like 2 ventilators.
That's it.
We're fortunate enough. We're in a small town, but our hospital is 400 beds. Not a great scenario because the surrounding area is 50,000. But compared to a lot of rural health facilities, our respirators I read locally here is like 34, 35 respirators compared to like the average rural place that has only 2. So, but we have the burden of New York City taxing all of the rest of upstate New York resource-wise. That's what I'm concerned about because our governor said that upstate New York won't be as affected as New York City, so they can pull from our resources.
Well, and that's it. But here's another thing, though, that we didn't see in other countries about hospital overrunning. We're starting to get creative now. We're hearing reports that these major cruise line ships are now donating ships for beds. regular hospital patients. So in other words, if you break your arm, just like on this ship, the Comfort, you're not going to go into the hospital that has all the coronavirus patients in it. You're going to go on a completely different ship. It has no infections, just normal hospital stuff. And that's how we're going to keep the spread low, hopefully, is that we're not mixing our patients back and forth. Just want to give you guys an update real quick. The latest numbers are in for today. We have added 5,006 cases here in the United States, now totaling 14,265 total cases of the COVID-19 virus here in the United States. And I'll give you a quick rundown on who leads how many cases are in each state. So here we go. New York now has a total of 5,706 cases. That added 339 cases. They had 4 deaths today, which put a total of 38 deaths in New York alone. 1 person has recovered out of these 5,000 cases so far. Washington came in at number 2 with 1,376 cases. 74 total deaths. We know the majority of those are from a nursing home. The good news today, they did not add on to their death toll today. California is sitting at 1,021 cases. They added 12. New Jersey with 742. And a slew of states with 400 cases in Florida, Illinois, 300 plus cases in Louisiana, Michigan, Massachusetts, Texas, Georgia, 200 plus cases in Pennsylvania, Colorado, Georgia, sorry. And then from the rest of the states on, we're talking about anywhere from 0 to 150 cases. Wisconsin, Connecticut, Tennessee, North Carolina added 13. The biggest jump in cases in these lower totals areas is D.C. 31 people tested positive for coronavirus in the District of Columbia. That brings their total cases to 71. So, West Virginia with 2 is the leader on the board, but we know that they haven't had the testing capability. So, I fear, because their population is young, or old, I'm sorry. Lots of elderly people in West Virginia. So, I fear that we're going to see a really bad problem in states like that, where the majority of your people are elderly.
I mean, Florida, I think, is going to be just...
Well, yeah, Florida's another state. South Carolina's another state.
We hear
Tennessee.
This area has a potential exposure at a nursing home right now. This case I'm watching right now, this family is complaining that they haven't been able to get a test, and that their 81-year-old granddad is showing symptoms, and they're concerned, and he has pneumonia, but it hasn't been diagnosed as being tested. So, that's going to be awful. The fact that they haven't prioritized a test for a family like that, who potentially could have exposed a whole nursing home. Meanwhile, we have these basketball players getting tested,
These celebrities, these movie stars, all getting tested. But yeah, good point, Mari. I tell you, I think it's unfortunate that the rich seem to have got the jump on this.
Well, they're the ones that have the doctors. Doc.
Think about it now. I mean,
order it up.
What was the first thing that started shutting down before the schools did? All of a sudden, the NBA suspended their season. The NCAA canceled their tournament. Baseball suspended their training. Schools weren't even closed yet. And all of these major sports leagues were saying, we're done, we're shutting it down. And all of a sudden, more elites. You could also... You also had some CEOs stepping down. Mari brought that up to me the other day. So I think it's very obvious that if you're rich in this world, that you are going to get privileges that us normal folk like us don't get. These guys obviously got the heads up and the jump on this. But also, to be fair to those basketball players that are getting tested, the only reason why they are being priority on this is because one player tested positive who has already given it to 3 other players on that team. and the Brooklyn Nets have 4 players that have it. So, to be fair, they tested positive. That's why the league canceled the rest of their season, and they went into panic mode and probably sent everybody to the state hospitals and got them tested. But it is a little unfair, in my opinion, that people with more money get a little bit better treated as far as for tests.
What concerns me right now is how often they're referencing this Imperial research paper as a basis of making their decisions and whatnot. And I'm going to read a little bit of this to give you some perspective. This is a paper that our government and over in UK, they're using as a way of setting up these guidelines. And you get into the paper and it talks about the different types of mitigation or suppression and how much it would take. Here in this paper it says the resulting mitigated epidemic would likely result in hundreds of thousands of deaths and health systems, most notably intensive care units, being overwhelmed many times over. For countries to achieve it, this leaves suppression as the preferred policy option. We showed that the UK and US in context, suppression will minimally require a combination of social distancing of the entire population, home isolation of cases, and household quarantine of their family members. This may need to be supplemented by school and university closures, though it should be recognized such closures may have negative impacts on healthcare systems due to increased absenteeism. The major challenge of suppression is that the type of intensive intervention is that of this type of intensive intervention package or something equivalently affected at reducing transmission that will need to be maintained until a vaccine becomes available. So they're saying that this needs to be available. The suppression we're going to have to do with the social distancing potentially for 18 months or more, given that we predict the transmission will quickly rebound if interventions are relaxed. And then it says we show that intermittent social distancing triggered by trends in disease surveillance may allow interventions to be relaxed temporarily in relative short time windows, but measures will be needed to be reintroduced or if one case numbers rebound. So essentially, we're going to be on lockdown in one cycle as the healthcare system winds down and gets a breather, and there's more hospital beds and respirators, and they're going to send people back to work and school, and then we're going to repeat. Once things start escalating again, they're going to start, increasing the restrictions and quarantines. And I mean, this is 18 months or more that they're talking about in this paper. And
now imagine this, and I just want to report some breaking news too. Imagine what Mari just said, that we're looking at 18 months to 2 years of this, possibly, before we could actually burn this out. California governor has just announced and ordered 40 million residents of the entire state to go into lockdown. Now, there's a lot been said, shelter in place. That's what they've called it in San Francisco. And then a few other cities along the west coast of California were also doing lockdown. Now, the entire state of California, 40 million people, have been ordered by the governor, Governor Newsom, who has been supported by Trump in public, is now ordering everyone to stay home. This is just the beginning, guys. These extreme measures are not enough. It has to be uniformed throughout the entire country. And I know there's a lot to talk about with lockdown, but but we're not really locked down. We're allowed to get groceries. We're allowed to get medicine if we have to take care of a loved one. If there's something we have to do as far as that, we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to exercise. We're allowed to take the dog on a walk as long as you continue to the social distancing. These are the stipulations in these lockdown cities. So it's it sounds worse, but still, when you have a governor instructing your entire state to stay home, all right, that's it, just stay home. And not only that, but New York reduced its workforce today. They don't want more than 25% of the workforce going to work right now. They want 75% of the workforce to stay home.
All right. And then another alarming statistic in this paper says we assume that 30% of those that are hospitalized will require critical care, which requires invasive mechanical ventilation or other type of ventilation like that, based on early reports from the cases in UK, China, and Italy. And based on clinical opinion, they assume that 50% of those in critical care will die. And they're predicting 81% of Great Britain and the US will be infected over the course of this epidemic. And that would predict approximately 510,000 deaths in Great Britain and 2.2 million in the US, not accounting for the potential negative effects of the healthcare systems being overwhelmed on mortality, which essentially means you have a hospital overrun with COVID patients and you don't have places for people to go for everything else. Cancer, heart, stroke, blood pressure, you name it, accidents. So truly alarming numbers on this. And when I first read this paper, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I just put it in my pocket as my, some facts and data that I had. But when I started seeing our presidential administration referencing this paper on a daily basis now, I am concerned. And they're referencing it right on TV. And I don't think the American public or even the worldwide public watching understands, like, wow. That's like the information in this paper it's unbelievable. It's surreal. I don't have access to chat. Let me see if I can get
So,
in the chat.
yeah, Richard, interesting you say that because he's saying maybe there's an exception for Tesla. They're still working. The sheriff went out there. They're still working in their factories. And guess whose stock was up? One of the big winners today in the stock market was Tesla. So, ironic that you mentioned that tonight. Again, here we are seeing privileges being given to people with lots of money. And Elon Musk has quite a bit of money. But lots of good questions here in the chat talking about grades. What do you do about seniors who are trying to finish out the year and get ready to go to college? Well, here's the thing, guys. My kids, my stepdaughter and my son are both doing their schoolwork from home. And I know this isn't available in all areas, but they eventually will get on board with this. But our school district actually passed out Chromebooks to the students before this, or when this went down. And they have their weekly assignments on this Google Drive, so they're able to keep up with their work. They'll get graded. There'll be interactive tutoring. There's Google Hangouts for the kids to see each other in the mornings with the principal. So I think there's going to be a lot of really neat things happening, and we're going to see people getting new jobs that maybe work for companies that do streaming meetings and stuff like that. There's going to be new opportunities, folks. Just because we're not going to work in our regular restaurant jobs or bartending jobs, it doesn't mean there won't be different things to do on the internet for a living.
It's still surreal, though. Like,
True.
When I was on the Chromebook with my daughter earlier today, it was a little emotional because her music teacher is publishing on YouTube. She plays guitar and sings, and she does, it's very Mr. Rogers. Hello, boys and girls! But it's like, wow. And my daughter almost got a little choked up because she's like thinking in her head, like, when am I going to see my teachers again? When am I going to see my friends again? And it's It's hard, Jake.
So
it's hard to watch the kids have to work in their own little brains through it. I hate it.
Not to be a wet rag knife collector, but I have to mention this. China's infection rate is way down. There are still over 2,000 that are in critical condition right now, and around 20,000 that are still active. So the disease itself is not gone, the virus, but the new cases are coming to a halt. And I can give you exact numbers here. If you go to worldometers.info, coronavirus, this actually, it breaks it down pretty good to the numbers. But right now in China, out of the 80,967, they had 39 new cases today, which was actually that's not saying Wuhan. They're reporting 0 in Wuhan, but 39 cases is actually, this is a slight bit more. They're usually around the 20-25 range. So today they saw a little bit more, and I was mistaken on the active cases. They only have 6,569 active cases, and 2,100 are in serious condition or critical. So still watching it. New deaths are down, only 3 today. So things are definitely tampering down, but Mari shared shared some very disturbing video earlier tonight before we went online. And I have no idea what to say, what you showed me. All we can say, it was video footage of Wuhan. Is that where it was, Wuhan?
Well, I use Twitter. I feel like there's a lot of angry anti-communist Chinese people on there feeding information about what a big bunch of liars their government is, and some of these videos that are being posted, one was from a skyscraper in Wuhan looking over like a village or their city, and there was just people screaming over and over again. And then apparently a few days or the night after, I guess there's another video of people clearing out this building, and it's just like these guys in hazmat suits like bagging bodies. And then there's a third video of someone asking, why is Wuhan so dark? And it just pans through all the buildings at night, and like you have all these skyscrapers, and there's only like lights on about 20%.
And who knows, those could have been candles or solar lights. So I mean, the electricity is clearly off.
I don't know, but now you have people posting stuff from Wuhan asking, where is everyone? Like, why are there so many lights out? What's going on? So we definitely don't have the full story. There's a website actually circling around that says this guy is like a whistleblower, essentially, and he said that hospital, like, he basically exposed the Chinese government of having a chemical weapon and why they wanted to do it. They wanted to work with it for the protests that was going on over there, and somehow it got out in the market. There was some kind of there was going to be some kind of financial exchange of the pathogen between this lab and another individual, and there was apparently a shootout, and somehow in the shootout this pathogen got released in Wuhan, apparently. So wow. there's a lot of interesting things on Twitter when it comes to
here's the thing,
what's going on over there.
Two things. China, you can't trust China. I mean, if you guys look at the Johns Hopkins site,
you can't trust any government.
No,
really.
You can't trust China right now because Italy has more deaths with half the cases. All right, China has approximately 1.5 billion or more in population. Yet they only had 80,000 infections. The United States of America, approximately around 329 million population. And I can tell you right now, folks, based on what we're seeing here in New York, and the beginning in places like Washington and California, which are beginning to build up speed, And other states will follow, because all it takes right now, from what we've seen, it only took one case in the United States. Even though we shut the borders down at January about the flights from China, all it took was one case.
I don't know.
So I don't know if we can fully trust the Chinese when you look and they only have 80,000 cases and a population as big as theirs. And Mari and I heard some horrifying stories about what the real numbers were in the millions.
There's a lot of unknowns, and I think we'll find out in hindsight, unfortunately, how this is going to unravel. It seems like the WHO, they were aware of this situation about the same time China was aware of it, but they sort of seemed a little, from what I've read, a little palsy-walsy with China. And now you're getting, I'm seeing a lot of lashback about...
Lashback?
I don't know. Just people wanting out of the UN.
I want some lashback.
I'm gonna freaking lash you back in a minute, mister. But, and then we had that weird meme I saw, I have to research, where the UN flag was removed from the Trump administration's announcement today. They had the usually, there's a UN flag and then an American flag, and it's been there all along, and today it was missing apparently, or one of the days. I don't know. People are reading into it like there's some kind of, like we're gonna break from the UN. All these different countries not happy.
So I want to talk about real quick before we leave the air tonight. Also, what are some of the symptoms, and what are the experiences of this flu, or this virus, I should say. The main thing is the cough, the dry cough, where you just cough and it doesn't produce anything. Fever of 100 degrees, 0.4 or higher, and the higher fever, the worse it is. And then, of course, the shortness of breath. And that experience, apparently, guys, this is not just the flu. Your chest will feel like an elephant is sitting on your chest, okay? Your congestion, you'll feel like you're drowning. That's how it's being explained. So the congestion that you feel in a regular cold or bronchitis has nothing on that feeling. I know as a kid I suffered with bronchitis, asthma. I had pneumonia twice in my childhood. I've had pneumonia twice as an adult. And when your lungs fill up with liquid and fluids that shouldn't be there, that feeling is very anxious. And again, you have to be on oxygen. And I understand now why a ventilator would be necessary for people's immune systems who just aren't quite as strong to fight this off. You know, getting pneumonia at young ages, I was able to fight it off. So what would happen now or in 10 years from now? My point is that I want people to understand what the symptoms are to this, because a lot of folks are confusing their seasonal allergies with conditions of coronavirus. Now, I've had a runny nose, stuffy nose, off and on for several days, but it is springtime. I have the worst allergies. My allergies are terrible in the fall and the spring. I've had a scratchy throat, no sore throat, no fever. You know, other than what my bout I had last week, I've felt pretty good. And I think, considering all things, other than just a little stressed, I feel pretty good right now. So it's important to know that when you have it, you'll know. And I think I only say this because I don't want people to sit and worry. If you're a person who has diabetes or heart or liver disease or whatever, any kind of chronic illness, I don't want people to sit at home and worry every day. Just know, you'll know if you have it or not. When you start feeling those symptoms, that's when you go to the hospital. And right now, every day I have a cough, I don't feel good, we can't go to the hospital right now for that. We have to kind of tough it out at home. We got to take medicine for it. Because if we all do that in a state of panic or fear that we might be sick with this,
You might expose yourself.
We could
to
expose
it
ourselves to it,
without
or we could block a hospital bed or emergency room triage for someone who really needs it, and meanwhile he's in the waiting room exposing people. So
Richard's saying that even asymptomatic people are showing signs of permanent lung damage.
yeah, I read that today too.
Really, I didn't read that.
Kyla.
We just got a 6.2 earthquake over near China as well. It's rocking over there.
Yeah. A nurse friend of ours sent an article how the CT scans are showing the scarring from this COVID once you recover from it. So this is now we got to talk about patients who suffer from COPD, emphysema. If they survive this bout of the virus and they get over the sickness, are they going to be able to live out the rest of their life without medical complications from respiratory illness off and on for the rest of their life because of the lung damage?
Well, it's just, and even with some kind of immunization, how the percentage of these immunizations aren't very high to begin with. You're talking 40 to 60 if you're lucky, depending on the year and the strain and the type flying around.
Yeah, this is just a weird thing. And in Monday I tried to do a report on Grand Solar Minimum channel, and I've dedicated that channel to just sticking with GSM. I threw in coronavirus a couple different times because I wanted to mention, on top of dealing with this virus, we still have Grand Solar Minimum conditions to deal with, but I'm not going to mix the channels. I want to keep GSM on GSM, and I want to keep WTF Sky loose. I mean, we usually are a parody channel, but we have also been known to talk politics and current events.
I think this has always been, a contemplative channel.
Yeah.
Weird
critical
stuff.
Thinking.
I've covered everything from quantum physics to spirituality to Nibiru and, all kinds of stuff on this. I love eschatology and, connecting the dots of the mysterious unknowns in the world. So, we like singing songs, but I don't know. Are we going to do that, Jake?
I think here's the deal. Are
you too doomy and gloomy to sing?
No. I think I just need some time to digest this. I think everyone does, and I think right now I feel like it's more important to get out some information truth-wise, because I feel like some of these not so much CNN, believe it or not, but I think Fox News is really trying too hard to keep everyone happy. I think they overdo it. I don't think they're not being truthful enough. If you're watching their TV, if you're watching that channel past 9 o'clock...
No one's being truthful with us.
9 and 10 o'clock, Lord have mercy.
There's absolutely no one being truthful for us, and if they're using this imperial research paper, like right here, just to give you an example, they're saying social distancing plus school and university closure if you need to be enforced for the majority of the 2 years. Because they're trying to reduce it from, the R naught value. They want to get it to 1 or below.
So, Mari,
and right now, God only knows what it is. I've seen ridiculously high R naught values for this particular virus. There's too many unknowns to really put a stamp on it, like what it is right now with all the freaking lying countries out there.
So, I mean, I guess my question is, how does that make you feel to hear that? Knowing that I'm diabetic, my immune system doesn't have what it used to have, so
I don't know.
It could put me at risk. So, this is basically saying, realistically, like, I shouldn't go out
I'm
do what I did before my regular life until when?
Our whole lives are turned upside down because you simply can't go out to work for the next 2 years because you're high risk. So what do we do? I mean, luckily, I can do website design, and I could probably come up with ways to make money, trying to come up and building
Sure.
websites for delivery,
Yep.
home delivery services, or something like that. I mean, I feel like I need to be like the breadwinner now, because I can't even imagine you going out in public and exposing yourself, knowing the risks. To me, it's not worth it. It's scary. And I don't know what this world is, unless maybe they can come up with programs for at-risk people to do, like, tele options or some kind of, at-home work.
But here's my question though. I mean, so let's say
they're going to have to come up with ways for more of the workforce to telecommute.
Let's be realistic. Who are the people that's going to be working delivering these goods that we're going to have to order from home? I mean, it sounds like, well, what you're reading to me, without this vaccine or this antibody, that we're always going to be at risk of catching this until we find an antibody or a vaccine to take for this.
So, to give you an example, this isn't a joke. This is what they're using to assess this. It says, overall, I can't talk. Our results suggest that population-wide social distancing applied to the population as a whole would have the largest impact, and in combination with other interventions, notably home isolation of cases and blah, blah, blah. And then it goes into talk about to avoid rebounds and all that, you have to put in this suppression and mitigation tactic, and there is no escape from this until there's a valid immunization. I'm going to post this link in the chat so people can actually read this. Basically, if they're able to slow it down, they said probably the best case scenario for the United States is 1.1 million deaths, which, people are having a laugh saying, oh, it's just the flu, 30,000 and all that. Isn't that the number that they dish out? I don't know, but everyone we know is going to be affected. They're going to know someone who's been affected, or this is a worldwide, that's why I put worldwide weirdness.
All I got to say is,
believe.
if California is going to put their people on lockdown and they only have over 1,000 cases confirmed right now, what are we doing here in New York? Where right now, New York almost has 5,500 cases. And that's more than half of the cases in the United States.
Oh, and it's going to pick up so much more, because our state has been...
You called it. When we first started seeing one here, one there, you're like, I can't believe New York isn't talking about it.
No, I kept on watching New York State. I said, Jake, New York State's quiet. Look at this. We're running rampant in New York City right now as we speak. That virus is running rampant. And our state, this is something good that Cuomo has done a pretty good job for the most part. I don't like him usually, but he has done some good things. And
well, he really explained the whole shelter in place.
He's very careful, and
so I thought he was just being a jerk, but he really had a point.
He doesn't want to scare people, and it's the same thing, but it doesn't sound as scary. So this is a huge psychological workaround for people. It's a total brain fuck. So you got to really be careful with how you present it to people. But Cuomo, I forgot what I was saying.
I'll tell you, really, maybe you'll remember what I'm talking about.
Maybe, I don't know.
Cuomo said today that he doesn't want to do a shelter in place, because to him, the term shelter in place is back what they told people in the 50s and 60s, 40s, nuclear bombs. You get into a room with no windows and you stay in there until you get the all clear. So to say that shelter in place, that term literally means just that. You don't leave for anything. The stipulations we're being given for these lockdowns that are happening right now, we're allowed to leave for groceries. We're allowed to leave for medicine. We're allowed to go outside for exercise. That is not a shelter in place. All right. And that's why Cuomo continues to say, I am not going to do anything like that. He's just being specific Because look, and I've told Mari this since day one, these politicians are trying to buy as much time of sanity as they can get.
It's a psychological baby step down to essentially compliance, so people comply, to reduce the looting, to reduce the rioting. I mean, look at some of these hurricanes that have blown on by, the looting and the rioting of people's homes and stuff that happened. Mankind is proven not to be very nice most times in situations like this. So a lot of the delayed reaction to all this, since what is happening is so extreme, I think is just the result of our government being afraid to say, shutting everything down, this is life as we know it, whatever. They're not doing that. It's like a psychological step down. Today we're going to do this, and then tomorrow we're going to step down a little bit further.
I mean, can you imagine just shutting it all down at once? You can't.
That equates to chaos because you don't have enough intellectual minds that pay attention to worldly events and world news and, watching this unfold for months. You got a bunch of people that are in their own little world, not paying attention to everything, basically getting whacked in the face with, like, the apocalypse. It's not an easy situation for anyone to have to manage or deal with. But I don't get the lack of WHO test kits, and that really screwed up states like New York because there's not enough testing facilities.
So let's talk about that. Those WHO tests, it wasn't what I thought it was. They were not quality tests. They were not. They were more possibilities for false positives. And the tests were not controlled and they were not FDA approved. So it wasn't that the administration didn't want the tests. They weren't approved by the FDA and they were proved to be, some of them were proved to be faulty.
I don't know. I'd sort of roll the dice looking at other countries and would have taken them anyway to at least get a jump start.
You're right. They should at least taken as many as they could. Even if we had false positives, we're still quarantining people.
Keep on retesting them like these other countries did. Because this was what, I forgot what I was talking about. Just how many weeks we are behind. The numbers that you're seeing now, I feel truly...
These were from 2 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
Yep.
So you have to watch this progression and understand that we're already 3 weeks behind on this with the progression of this virus. So you have to, when you go out, you just have to assume, even if your county doesn't have anything, you have to assume that your area is affected and act accordingly. And I would just say stay inside as much as you can until this thing is figured out a little bit more. There's too many unknowns to risk it, and it's not worth the risk.
So let's talk about the reasons why we should stay in, and two reasons. One, it's to stop the spread. I mean, this is how serious they are about this now. It is absolutely to stop the spread. But the number one reason why you should follow the advice of the CDC, and the number 2 point, is that the United States government is passing a bill that will give $1,200, up to $1,200 for an individual adult, plus $500 per child. If you're a couple, it's $1,000 each, and still $500 per child. So a household with 4 people, wife, husband, 2 kids, wife, or husband, 2 kids, whatever, any way you like it. 4 kids, a family of 4, gets about $3,000 a month. Now,
but isn't it like there's only 2 distributions?
So there's one in April and one in May. All right. It was described to us by the Secretary of Treasury that we are in a baseball game-like mentality when it comes to these bills. It comes in phases. Think of it as a 9-inning baseball game. Right now, we are in the 2nd inning, getting ready to finish the 3rd. So there's going to be another 6 bills. They're going to come out. But right now, this last bill that they're getting ready to sign into law is going to pay us in April 6th, and then May 13th. All right, so there's going to be 2 waves of checks. So think about this. As greedy as the government is, because they are, let's face it, they take taxes, they take your freaking paychecks every week, they take 30%, they take what they want. They're greedy. For them to offer to not only shut it down and make you sit at home, but then pay you for it. Guys, the red flags can't be any clearer. This is extremely serious. Stay home. We will take care of you. We will, and I'll tell you right now, I just got a text message from a peer of mine, and this is what they're doing here in New York. And it's going to be, because of the cases soaring more than 40% in just 24 hours, New York's governor announced a 90-day mortgage relief. So mortgage owners don't have to worry about it for the next 90 days. The U.S. is preparing for a pandemic to last for up to 18 months or longer. Jobless claims have spiked to its highest level in 2.5 years. But also on top of this mortgage relief, the utility company here, I called today to set up an arrangement to make a payment. My electricity bill is due. And basically they are saying that there will be no collections actions. There will be nothing turned off. Simply pay what you pay, and we'll figure this out by the end of April. We'll update it where we need to extend the period or not. Now, I assume that we will have to see this end of April period extended probably for another 60 days at least at that point. So, to me, I've never imagined in my wildest dreams that we would be told to stay home and everything's taken care of. That's
weird.
Serious.
It's weird. That's for sure. But I just knew in my gut when I saw this unfolding in China. It was like second week in January. I was like, oh, that's
well, we both
interesting.
did, you know?
And we were just like watching it. And we didn't mention it on the channel till like the end of January, right? Or was it February? I don't remember. But watching it unfold, when the whistleblower doctor was still alive, I was on his channel and I was paying attention to his daily updates and stuff, and just to see where we've gone from just that in such a short amount of time frame. It's unreal.
So, on top of the stimulus package money that American families are going to get, now, mind you, there is an income limit. For a single individual who makes $75,000 or less, you are eligible for that $1,200. Individuals over that threshold, it drops down to $600 per adult and $500 still per the child. But
the cutoff is $99,000 a year, right?
I thought it was 75 for single, $150 for the couple.
Yeah, I think after $75,000, they reduce your whatever amount you're getting by $5 per every $100 up.
Question is,
mathematical equation for it.
How are they going to know who's affected by this? This is the only thing that confuses me about this bill, is that I haven't got to go through it yet. Mario and I do have it. But I don't understand how they're going to are they just going to give every American household?
They're taking you have to have made, I think the bottom cutoff is 2,600, and then the top cutoff is 99,000. But they start tiering how much you actually get the higher you go up past 75,000. So most people will generally get 1,200, 1,000, 1,200 for an individual.
I wonder if you have to file for this.
No, apparently they are using your tax return information from 2018 to determine eligibility.
Well, either way, you're not... I feel like this bill is going to take care of people. Now, here's where I'm going with this. I saw a financial advisor on Fox Business News today, and he called this term the four walls. We're living in the four walls term. And that is, your priority is your utilities, your rent, and your food, and clothes. And let's think about that for a minute, because Mari and I, we were, I have clothes. Mari has clothes. So it's not like we couldn't manage with what we have.
I'm not really thinking about buying a dress right now.
So we can take that out of the budget. Bills and rent, absolutely. Now, will your landlord lower your rent during this time? Who knows? There might be a tax incentive for property owners who were human about this situation, because I cannot go to work at this time, and under a doctor's instructions. So I'm the main income of the household. Therefore, are these landlords gonna punish people who are affected the similar way and can't go to work, can't make money like they were? So I don't think that's going to happen. I think already here in the state of New York, where electricity and gas will stay on, they've already committed. Spectrum, the internet, they've also committed. Verizon is also committed till the end of April. So the government is going to pay you. Your utilities, internet, and phone are not going to be disconnected. And you can still buy food and drugs. I meant medicine. Drugs.
I don't know what.
It's weird.
Auto loans, car insurance.
That's next. Again, we've got 6 more bills that are going to either A, bail out industries, bail out small businesses, bail out us. I mean there's 6 more bills to come.
Some of these countries, because of the coronavirus, I've read, and I don't know if this is 100% or not, but they're nationalizing their airlines. They're nationalizing their hospital systems to get rid of the bureaucracy and just take care of things. And even, I believe, like, the New York mayor said that we're going to have to nationalize some of these large businesses to make this transition from the virus into normalcy. What do you think of that, Jake?
I don't know. I just nationalizing, like I said, it's just really weird.
I would think Italy actually was they nationalized all the airlines. So
yeah, it's just like I said, this is a weird situation, because if you just slow down and zoom out and see what's happening, you're gonna like, oh, so we can stay home and not really worry, except just don't get it. All right, we gotta ration our food a little differently. We gotta buy differently. Well, nothing's open. You can't go bowling. You can't go karting. You can't go out and get ice cream at your local ice cream shop. Your kid's not playing Little League right now. There's nothing to do. There's no baseball games to go to, no races to go to, there's no movie theaters, no nothing. So when you think about, is $3,000 enough? Is $6,000 in 2 months enough? And are we going to see that on a continuing basis? The answer is no. We're not going to see that every month. I believe in the beginning it'll be big while it lasts. But if it gets to the point where this goes on for the 18-month period that some are expecting, I think you're going to see a country struggling, and it'll turn into the military will be dropping off what rations they can drop off to every American household. Because I'm not trying to be gloom and doom, but Jesus, 18 to 24 months of this particular lifestyle, I don't know how that, I just don't know how the markets, I predict the stock market will hit 10,000 within 2 weeks. I hope I'm wrong. If the numbers soar like this, Friday, I think they're going to ignore this tomorrow. I don't think the Dow Jones is going to be affected because we expected the test results. If we're looking at hundreds of thousands of cases by next week, I think the panic alarm is going to go off, unfortunately. Even though we know that there are hundreds of thousands of cases that are walking around right now undetected. We know that. It's still going to freak people out. When you see the black and white, that's when you get the realization. When you hear it, it's like, eh. When you see it for yourself, it really becomes a reality. And people are going to have to learn how to, or try to cope with that anxiety. I know, hey, look, this is really only officially day 3 of this CDC guidelines. And in 3 days, we've gained, what, 8,000 cases?
Oh, and it's so much more than that. Like,
Just in the
especially in our
U.S.
city. I mean,
Just in the U.S.
New York. I mean, some state to be in during this. I'm just like absolutely mortified to be in New York right now.
Well, the good
Like,
news is we're in this little mountain town, so hopefully that
it
saves
is
us.
nice that we're remote and our community works together for the most part. I think we are sort of like a small town, kind of help each other kind of community. However, we live on a street that's rather busy, and it doesn't seem like the traffic's died down at all, which is sort of concerning to me because I haven't left the house since Saturday, and I'm getting a little cabin fever. I wouldn't mind going out driving around, but I simply will not risk being exposed. There's not enough tests to ensure that this area is safe, so why risk it? Especially when I got a Jake in the house.
So, Knife Collector, boy, I hope that's wrong, but he makes the point some people did not get 2008 stimulus payment because they owed back taxes, child support, etc.
That's not going to really help people.
So here's the difference of the 2008 situation and right now. In 2008, the banks were struggling. The automakers were struggling. The economy was struggling. I mean, we really couldn't get it off the ground since 9/11. So the banks were failing, money was being lost, and the United States government basically threw a bunch of money at the banks and kept the big companies alive to continue on. Fast forward to 2020, what's happening right now. Our economy was the number one economy in the world. We were skyrocketing over 11,000 points on the Dow Jones. We got to 29,000 on the Dow Jones. Trump grew this economy faster than any president. I mean, we were absolutely just crushing it as an economy here. And then this virus hits, and everything just drops out. And the good news is that our economy is stronger in the last 3 years than in history of our American economy. So that means there's more cash on hand. There's more money. There's richer CEOs at banks. And right now, banks have agreed to these terms, but the president has worked out a deal, obviously. I mean, these guys are going to see some incentives, I'm sure, in their taxes. Hey, look, the bottom line is, I really feel like the difference between people getting money when the banks were failing and the economy sucked back then, because it was everybody's fault. The credit, the housing bubble, everybody had a part in it. Not everybody, I should say, but most people who were in debt, they played their part to get us in that position in the first place as well. There was not a lot of smart, responsible decisions being made during that era. A lot of it can be blamed on Bush, some blame it on Obama. Nevertheless, our economy was failing. Right now, we are strong, robust. So we can afford what's happening right now for a few months. But how long does this generosity go? And from what I'm understanding, the president's talking about let's go big and get it over with. So $6,000 in 2 months. And if we're getting utilities waived, everything else waived, who's to say that we don't work out lower rates? Mari brought up a good point to me today. We were watching the stock market drop. And, guys, inflation. I mean, we're not going to be paying the same amount of money for stuff anymore.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's going to happen with people's rent, when the economy crashes, people aren't making as much money, the system's pretty much destroyed. You got people, rent, alright, so let's see, in the 90s, I was paying about $400 for rent for a really nice, 3-bedroom apartment. Nowadays, that same apartment would be probably around $1,200 to $1,500 a month, unless you get lucky. You might get $1,000 if you're lucky, but that is like this area in New York, and it's in Buffalo, pretty much all across New York. Now, if you're in the city, good luck. Like, you're looking at a nice studio for about $1,500 if you're even lucky. The cost of living in New York is atrocious. It's very hostile. So, what is this state going to do when they're basically having the rug pulled out of under their feet and everything sort of collapses? Is there going to be a financial reset to stabilize things? Because surely you can't have people like, I mean, the unemployment rate, let's face it, guys, probably is close to around 70%, because they've cut our workforce down to 25% here in our state. So 25% of the workforce is allowed to go and leave the house in New York. So you have all these people. How are you going to...
And possibly another 30% that could still work from home.
You look at these scientific research papers, and it could be dragged out 18 to 2 years. 18 months to 2 years. So obviously something has to burst. And how they're going to actually work through this while society is kept calm. I believe the only way to keep society calm is to just keep on printing money and feeding it to us to shut us up and keep us happy while they try to scratch their heads and figure out a new way of doing things. Because I just don't see how... I mean, they're talking about pausing people's mortgage payments for up to a year. I mean, that's like... Can you imagine?
Let me pop this out before I forget it again. Forget about just paying your bills again normal. Think about when we get out of this, and those of you who live in New York, the state taxes. I mean, no one's going to be able to afford to pay their property taxes.
The property taxes here are horrendous. I mean, you're talking $4,000 a year between
easily
city, county, and schools.
And we live, and I'm sure it's higher in other places. I know one of my coworkers where he lives, he pays $6,700 a year in property tax where he lives.
And I mean, that's going to hit us hard, because my dad's house that I'm paying taxes on isn't even livable. Like, I tried so hard just to save money to fix his house. And now with this, it's like, it almost seems impossible. So I'm dealing with the debt load of my dad's house while we're paying for rent. So we're paying taxes on my dad's house and then rent monthly here. I don't know. It's going to be a disaster, I think.
Here's what I really believe this is going to happen. If the government is already getting guaranteed from utilities and other companies like Verizon and Spectrum, I think that, I hope, if the mortgages are being waived for 90 days, what does that do with your landlord? Does your landlord say, okay, I tell you what, let's cut the rent. I know what you're getting a month. The government sends you this much. You got to pay your bills. What does that do with your car loans? What does that do with your car insurance? Do you pay your car insurance for the next 3 months? Do you pay your car insurance at all until this is cleared?
I'm not even using my car, so I essentially might as well just park my car in the garage and...
That's what we did.
Just, like, turn in my freaking license plates and say, I don't have to pay my car insurance.
Somebody asking about their 401k. Listen, if you're...
Thank you, Matt.
Oh, and Matt donated.
He didn't even do a cheeky comment. He just did a super chat. Because he didn't want any of your lip back. Like,
he knows I'm messing around.
Sassing you.
If you're in your 30s and younger, let's go 40s. If you're 40 or if you're in your 40s or younger, your 401k will be okay.
He's like, go Brady.
If you are in your 50s, you're a little concerned. If you're 60s, your 401k is taking a huge hit right now.
I feel awful for my mom. Like, she so close to retirement. She works in like a factory that produces medical equipment. Now I feel awful for her because she's exposed. If they don't give her some kind of leave or cut her work hours, I hate the fact of that. And then just knowing that she feels hopeless right now. She's talking about living in our basement because she doesn't know what she's gonna do because of the stock market. She doesn't think she's gonna have enough time to even recoup this to be able to retire.
And that's the concern for people in their 60s. Kim says she's 55. I think you'll have time to rebuild. There will be a dent in your 401k. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But I think you're going to be able to recoup in time once we get through this period. Look, even if it is 18 months, just know you will never see a stock market spring back into the 20,000s or higher than this economy. Because when we're allowed to go back to work, I mean, look, this economy was not accidental. There were some good measures in place. A lot of regulations rolled back. It worked out to our advantage. Higher paying jobs, happier employees, people want to stay at their companies longer. That's what was starting to happen in this economy. And just from my experience, I can say that. But I know a lot of people who are in the same boat. There's a lot of people that I work with that have been with this company as long as me or a little bit longer, and that's hard to find these days. People who like to stick around with one company. So I believe that once this is over with, yes, this economy will bounce back. It's weathering this storm. And I guess our point of even coming on and doing these live shows is to help people, like, we're going to have to start coping with the idea that it's a very good possibility that maybe we're not on full lockdown, but we are going to have a severe disruption of our day-to-day life, just like they said February 25th, 2020, when they warned us about these disruptions, and we only had 2 cases in the United States. So, yes, need more factories and medicines made here. 100%, Matt. And this is a huge eye-opener, if anything. Because we wouldn't have to shut down if those necessary goods were made in our country. When it comes to the drugs, the medicines to help cure this, and just our every other day over-the-counter stuff or antibiotics, we do need to produce 80 to 90% of that here in the United States. There's no reason why we should rely heavily on 20 countries.
I just don't understand why we
to
would
produce our medicine.
Yeah, we have to become a bit more self-reliant. You can't trust these other countries because
20 other countries.
There's the CCP, like there's a few head guys on Twitter just spreading propaganda like crazy and fear-mongering, trying to stir trouble. And you can see on Trump's face when he says shit about China, it's like he's angry. And we only know a quarter of the story, if that, a very small fraction of the story. So, you know, they're threatening halting supplies like pharmaceuticals. That's pretty hostile. Taiwan is going to be sending over 100,000 masks per week, I believe, to us, helping us out.
I know this is a terrible thing for me to say, but good Lord, let's hope that there's nothing funny on the masks.
I'm sure they would inspect them.
I'm just, listen, at this time, I think I'll just, I don't know.
I mean, I get it. I mean, it's concerning.
We Lysol the mail, okay?
Listen, my regime, like, I have, while I can, I've been ordering food from Instacart just to keep my supplies in the house topped off. And when I use Instacart, it's nice because you can see if it's out of stock or not. For the most part, it's updated pretty good, and they deliver all your groceries right to your house. And I have them leave it on the steps, and then I go out and I Lysol everything and wipe everything down, and then I bring it in the house. Call me paranoid, but I mean, welcome to the new world.
There's a test out there you guys can conduct on yourself every day to check and see if if you feel like you've got the cough, you got a fever, shortness of breath. They say to hold your breath for 10 seconds, and if you can do it for 10 seconds without any difficulty or tightness or itchy or just making you cough, you likely don't have the infection. So again, we got to remember there are springtime allergies flying everywhere right now. I am going through my allergies right now, so we have to keep that in mind as well. Just
Matt
peace of mind.
Russia's not reporting. There's a lot of rumors flying around that, and recently on
They just
Twitter,
got their first death today.
Oh man, I don't know exactly where in Africa, but someone posted a leaked video from Africa what they're dealing there, and it basically just had all these people lying on the ground with first responders all over them, just gasping for air. It did not look like a pretty situation in Africa, so I gotta do some more research. And there's definitely, when you're looking at the numbers, it's definitely underreported. And most of the numbers are probably 2 to 3 weeks behind, to give you a better perspective of the severity of it.
Yeah. Well, Mari, I think this would be a good time to wrap it up. We can do another one of these this weekend. As time goes by, we find more out about what kind of restrictions we're going to actually be in. I think we're going to see a lot more frequent programming from this channel, from TSM.
I know we're going to get, when we get really stir crazy and goofy, we're probably going to come on this channel and, blow some steam.
Right.
And we're planning a call-in show for this channel as well. So we'll have a call-in show on GSM and then a call-in show on WTF Sky too, right? For weird, obscure
chat. Well, Friday night I was just going to do a regular live broadcast, and then if we did a live call-in, it would be sometime on Saturday or Sunday. So right now everything's just up in the air until we just kind of get settled into our new.
I think we have enough credit to do one more show on our call credit thingy.
I ain't worried about that. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for chatting with us and sharing ideas. Listen, we're all in this together, like you've heard all over the place, but it's the truth. And I feel like that chats like this can be useful. Everybody can reassure. Maybe there's home remedies that we don't know about, and we can talk about them in the chat, talk about them on the program. But I'd like to continue these conversations just to kind of keep people connected as well.
I want to talk about vegetables that you can reuse to plant, like celery and stuff. A lot of people don't realize they can use that if you're in a pinch. You don't have seeds, you can't get out of the store, you can't easily find stuff to grow. If you want to get in the habit of growing things, what kind of stuff you might have just laying around, you might be able to start something with. So maybe next time.
All right, guys. Thanks again, Matt, Jesse, Knife Collector, Richard. Thank you all once again. Jeff, Kim, participating in the chat. Susan, hello. And I think I said everybody. I hope I said it. If I forgot you, sorry about that. But we hope everyone has a safe evening. Guys, take it easy. We will cut back in with any breaking news, especially if things get too hairy here. Because, look, I have a feeling that we'll be talking a lot about this on this channel. So we'll see you guys real soon.